Good evening, Ajax. Welcome, and thank you for tuning into the fifth and final installment of our Ajax Diversity Exchange speaker series presented by the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force. My name is Devin, and I'm the town's social media and communications coordinator. We are joining you today remotely from various locations due to COVID-19 restrictions and precautions. We appreciate your patience and understanding should we have any technical difficulties during the live program. We would like to assure you that there is a technical team working behind the scenes, and if we do experience any issues, we will be back up and running on the same platform as soon as possible. Today, as the presentation and discussion takes place, we do encourage our audience to submit any questions, comments, or reflections down below in the comments section. We do have our social media team behind the scenes, and they will be able to relay a few of your questions during the Q&A portion after the speaker's presentation. If we're unable to get to all of your questions today, we will follow up with you and ensure you receive all the necessary information and resources. Now, I would like to introduce our facilitator for today, Brenton Adeline, member of the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force, proud Ajax resident and business owner. He will begin the program this evening with the land acknowledgement. Over to you, Brenton.
Thank you, Devin. I would like to begin the program this evening by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of Mississaugas. More specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island, First Nation signatories, and the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the William Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past throughout authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation, and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Let us also acknowledge those who entered this land by force, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Through the work of Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force, anchored to the pillars from the UN International Decade for People of African Descent, let us endeavor to connect our communities and efforts to uplift the traditions of this land. Once again, good evening, Ajax. My name is Brenton Aline, and I'm pleased to facilitate this final speaker series, today hosted by the Ajax Diversity Exchange and the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force. The task force has been assembled to listen to local Black voices and initiate concrete actions to support the Black community and other racialized groups in Ajax. Today we have the fifth installment of a 5-speaker series. Our chair, Mariska Thomas, and members of the Anti-Black Racism Task Force are incredibly happy to be a part of this series. Thank you for joining us. The topics being discussed tonight is hope and goal setting for personal success. Our guest speakers will be presenting on this topic, followed by a question and answer period. We encourage all viewers to interact and submit your questions in the comment sections below. Our guest presenters for the evening are Michael Shah and Aubrey Norona. Our first speaker, Aubrey from HelloHope.ca. Aubrey is recognized in safe schools, mental health, and anti-racism speaker who has booked over 350 engagements in the last year within Ontario and Nova Scotia, and is slowly making his way across different parts of the country with his 2022 Make Hope virtual tour. He has been presenting his talks, Hello Hope and Colorblind, Why Being Not Racist Is Enough Anymore, to students and families all over, as well as to professionals, public servants, and municipalities. As a former crisis negotiator within the justice system and critical incident stress management facilitator, serving those impacted by terrorism and other traumatic events, Aubrey will leave schools, communities, and professionals feeling encouraged and equipped to make their schools and communities safer one day and one decision at a time. He is also a recipient of the Town of Ajax 2021 Diversity and Community Engagement Award. Aubrey is also a singer and has sung duets with John Legend, Adele, and Alicia Keys while listening to them on his Bluetooth speaker in the shower. Our second speaker for the evening is Michael Shaw. Michael Shaw is an experienced educator, speaker, and coach who has been a leader in the development of soft skills for over 20 years. Michael is a professor and faculty consultant for human skills development at George Brown College, facilitator of executive education at Sulik School of Business, a two-time published author, and host of the podcast Upskills Talks. She unpacks complex issues bit by bit using relatable stories and practical examples. Then she provides bite-sized steps that are readily actioned to deliver measurable results. She truly believes that the development of personal and interpersonal skills can significantly improve how we work, play, and live with each other, and have a lasting impact on our rapidly changing society. So now to begin the conversation, we have Aubrey and Michael.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the town of Ajax, to the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force, Ajax Diversity Exchange for this opportunity to come alongside and to affirm this community with hope. I'm Aubrey, the motivational speaker, here to start things off, and then I'm going to pass the baton over to Miss Michelle Shaw. I don't like to call myself a motivational speaker, though. I try to be an inspirational speaker who endeavors to inspire folks to get motivated. Because you see, a motivational speaker can sometimes be guilty of not reading the room, not reading the reality in the room, reading the reality of what folks are going through or what folks are dealing with or what folks are unable to go through or what folks are struggling to deal with. You know, the motivational speaker, they'll say, you can achieve anything you want. You have a tiger inside of you, not realizing that the tiger inside of a lot of people looks like this poor guy. So even if I don't necessarily motivate folks here tonight, my hope is that I can inspire you to get motivated. We are exactly 671 days into this pandemic. It's been 671 days since the World Health Organization deemed COVID-19 a global pandemic. And it's been like nothing that most of us have ever really seen. A friend of mine, she described this pandemic like a camping trip. Now, keep in mind what I'm about to quote. She said about 4 weeks into the pandemic. So it was like the first or second week of April 2020. This is what she said. She said, when camping, you put up with the inconveniences because you know that you're going to go home. But right now, we don't know when we're going back home. We are still living in this. What we thought was temporary is now becoming a long-term fight. And now that's not news to any of you who have joined us here tonight. It's not news to you that we are still fighting this thing or that it is a long-term fight. When I ask folks, even earlier today, I was speaking to a group at a high school, and I asked all of these educators, I said, how long did you think this was going to last? And a whole bunch of folks said, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a couple of months. A couple of individuals said maybe a year or two. When you think about these inconveniences, they're not little inconveniences anymore. Now that we're 2 years into this thing, we still don't know exactly when we're going back home, but we must fight. And even though it's stressful, even though these are uniquely stressful times, it should be said, though, that, stress in and of itself is not a bad thing, especially when we're talking about it in the short term. Stress in the short term is when we have this biological response, right, to stressors. It's when our central nervous system kicks into a threat, a perceived threat. So whether it's my kids being afraid of a thunderstorm, or if a mouse was loose in your home, Or something serious like a car accident. 3 months ago, drunk driver almost killed me. Very stressful, especially in that moment. And yes, there are some long-term things, but right in that moment, my body did what it needed to do, and it responded accordingly. And typically, when we have these short-term stressful situations, balance can come again. We can bounce back. But when you think about what happens to us when stress is prolonged, that's when, typically we can meet the demands of our stressors in the short term, but when stress is prolonged, it impacts us emotionally, it impacts us physiologically, it impacts us socially. I'm an extrovert. I don't know about any of you. Even though I'm an extrovert, there's been times where I just wanted folks to leave me alone in the last couple of years. Right now, it's not short term. Right now, this stress that so many of us have been facing, it has been prolonged. Time keeps ticking. And we're all dealing with it differently, aren't we? It's impacting different resources for different people. Some of those resources are tangible, like products or manufacturing if you have a business, or staffing if you've had to let somebody go, or if you yourself have been let go. Some of these resources may not be tangible, but they're still ever so real. Some of these resources are internal, they're mental, they're in our hearts. And it's caused some folks to feel deflated, or like a deflating balloon, that air slowly just coming out. There's this disconnect from excitement. There's this disconnect from looking forward to the future. There's this disconnect for so many of us from this source of success. And I suspect that many of you here who are joining us, you want to succeed, and you want to succeed more. This evening, I want to encourage you to reconnect. And I stress the re in reconnect. You can connect with anything once or twice, but when it comes to hope, when it comes to getting through a difficult time like the one that so many of us are dealing with, we can't afford to just connect once. We need to reconnect and reconnect and reconnect to whatever it is that's working to keep the power flowing in a good way into our lives, like electricity. Whatever it is that is keeping us on. When I think about this idea of reconnection, I think about how we need to come back to something. We need to refer back. We need to circle back. When I think about reconnection, I think about referring back to directions. You guys remember MapQuest.com? Before we all had smartphones, I remember my wife and I would be driving from Ajax to Buffalo, and I would always print 3 pages of directions on MapQuest.com, and I'd be referring to those things just to get us to Buffalo. We wanted to go shopping or something. And my wife would laugh at me with my 3 pages of directions from MapQuest.com. She'd be like, dude, we're only in Pickering. Why are you still looking at those directions? But, I stand by it. Referring back to something, it still has its value. When you think about cooking, referring back to something, reconnecting with the recipe, especially if you're adding garlic into it, right? Or chili powder, or some of that good Madras curry powder that you get at the West Indian store in Harwood. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's important to refer back to it. You think about our kids in school, they're referring back to the rubric when they're doing an assignment, or the teachers referring back to the curriculum to make sure that they're doing their lesson delivery in line with the curriculum. Or for those of you, you have a boss, and maybe your boss is emailing you some new mandate, and you have to stay in line with it. You got to refer back. You got to circle back. You got to reconnect. And when I think about reconnect, of course, I think about instructions, like IKEA instructions. I hate IKEA instructions. I like IKEA furniture, but I don't care for the instructions. But you got to circle back to it again and again and again. There's 3 things that I want to encourage you all to reconnect with tonight. And please note that I'm not saying just to connect, but I'm really wanting to encourage folks to reconnect again and again and again. With all the people in your world, with all the folks that you might be working with in your world, the folks that you might be taking care of, that you might be serving, you might be leading, who knows? We need you as a community to be reconnecting and reconnecting and reconnecting. The first thing that I want to encourage you to reconnect with is to reconnect with yourself. Now, I have a confession to make. If this was even 6 months ago and I heard somebody say, reconnect to yourself, I would probably roll my eyes and I would probably think to myself, cue the massage therapy background music. This is about to get sleepy. This is about to get cheesy, a little bit sappy, a little new agey. But my mind has been changed. I want to encourage you all to reconnect to yourself, to who you are. Not just to what you do, not just to what you're trying to do, or where you work, or where you're trying to work, or what your role is, not what your responsibilities are, or how much you make, how close to retirement you are, how far away from retirement you are, but to who you are. Who are you? How do you see yourself? And like I said, I know it could come across as a cheesy type of question. That's how I thought about it before, but my mind has been changed. Many of us, we're working like crazy these days, or maybe we're not working and we feel like we're going crazy. But with all the busyness and craziness in your life, do you ever just take a minute to think about who you are and to think about how much you matter? I've come to realize that it's not the deep things, it's not the deep ideas, the deep concepts and the difficult concepts that are going to change human lives. It's usually just those simple yet profound ideas. Things that we may know already deep down, but for one reason or another, we're not living like we know. And perhaps it's not that we don't know, it's just that it's not in the forefront of our minds. It's like if you have glasses, but you're not using them, you left them in your bag, you left them on the desk. If they're not resting on your nose, those glasses are of no good use. They're not doing what they were made to do. Today, I want to hand you some figurative glasses. I want you to put them on, and I want to hand you a lens in which to see the world, a lens in which to see your world, a lens in which to see your community here in Ajax, a lens in which to see your neighbors, your clients, your customers, your family members, your loved ones, your not so loved ones. I want to hand you a lens in which to see people. But ultimately, I want to hand you a lens in which to see yourself. And hopefully, if I accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, once you see this, I hope you'll never be able to unsee it. This screenshot that you see right here, this picture is of a screenshot from a commercial from the company Dove. They make the skin products. They took a random building, 2 doors, 2 entrances right beside each other in this building, and they put these 2 signs up above the entrance. One entrance said beautiful, the other entrance said average. It was a cool social experiment with hidden cameras to see which door people would use or which door people would choose to walk through. There was nothing special on the other side. What the Dove company people wanted to do was they wanted to observe which door were people going to go through, and then they were going to ask them, why'd you choose that door? And why did you not choose that door? The answers were very touching. You can Google this commercial. It's like a 4-minute mini film. The answers were really touching, and there was really pretty piano in the background, really thought-provoking piano stuff in the background. And you hear people when they're being interviewed, they would say, well, I chose beautiful because that's how I see myself. Or you'd hear people say, I chose average because I'm not beautiful. I ended up finding out that the whole campaign behind this commercial was called Choose Beautiful. In other words, Dove wanted people to walk through whatever they're walking through in life, knowing that they're beautiful. And then I also found out that the target audience was women and girls. But this video had a huge impact on me because I realized it had the potential of affirming and encouraging men too, boys too, anyone, everyone, but not just about beauty, about something deeper. When you wake up in the morning, and you have CNN on in the background, or CP24, or 680 News, or Jazz FM, or a podcast, or whatever's playing on in the background. And when you make your coffee or your green tea, and you're getting ready for the day, and when you choose to walk out of your home through whatever door you're walking out through, do you ever think about who you are? Do you ever connect with the idea of who you are, or reconnect with who you are? I put money on it that most of us probably don't. Why? I suspect that the reason why most of us don't is because there's so many things on any given day that are screaming for your attention. So many decisions to be made. It's so cluttering in the mind. Kind of like when you used to win in solitaire back in the 90s, and that whole deck just kind of flew around. so many responsibilities you have, so many meetings, so many emails, so many needs, so many Netflix shows that need to be watched, so many choices. Anyway, we have all these things that are screaming for our urgent attention. Most of us probably don't take a minute to connect with who we are. Who are you? Ken Hoffman, he's a clinician, he's an attachment researcher. He said that if he were to define evil, this is how he would define evil. He said, evil is the belief that some people are worth more than other people. And when we institutionalize that, it really becomes evil. We know this is the case, especially towards our Black brothers and sisters, our Indigenous brothers and sisters, our siblings of any racialized group. We know this. But that point that Ken Hoffman was making, he was actually making it to set the stage for the thesis of this particular lecture he was giving. And this was the thesis that he was ultimately trying to communicate. This was his main point. His main point was that every person you meet has infinite worth. He goes on to say that infinite worth is something that when you begin to see it and you recognize it, you start seeing it everywhere. You start seeing it for the random people you see on TV or on YouTube or down the street, your neighbors. Once I started thinking like this, everybody I started looking at, I just looked at them like, you have infinite worth. You are a person of infinite worth. And I can't stress to you how cheesy I thought that phrase was at first. But again, my mind got changed. When you think about overt acts of racism and covert acts of racism, the person who committed those acts, there's no way that they had this truth in the forefront of their minds. There's no way that this truth that every person you meet is of infinite worth, there's no way that was at the forefront of their minds. It's terribly difficult to treat somebody as though they're worthless if when you see them as having infinite worth. Just this week on my own little website, I just launched a bunch of shirts. I opened up this store, and one of the designs in my store is called Undisputed Dignity. Yes, this is a shameless plug, but I'll explain the context. The shirts say Undisputed Dignity, and the subtext says there can be no question. There's many versions I have of this design with silhouettes of Black women and Black girls, silhouettes of Black men and Black boys. And originally, when I had this vision to put this design together, given my background working in the justice system, working in the education system, I had this vision of seeing every racialized student. I was really picturing kids, and teenagers. I had this vision of seeing every racialized student who is otherwise subject to being pushed out into the criminal justice system through systemic and institutional racism. I had this vision of seeing all of these beautiful children wearing these shirts. And then I also had this vision of people with institutional power, teachers, youth workers like myself, members in law enforcement, whoever. I had this vision of people with institutional power looking at these beautiful children. And when they see those two words, they are reminded as caregivers, as leaders, those kids have undisputed dignity. It cannot be disputed. It's a vision, it's a dream, it's also just a piece of clothing. But I hope it can inspire. And if you want one at the end, let me know. The website's right there. 90% of those sales go to a Black-owned, female-owned business. Not my business, a Black-owned, female-owned business. Anyways, this statement of undisputed dignity, it blew up in my mind after reading this quote. And this quote is from educator, sociologist, speaker, Black liberation activist, Anna Julia Cooper. This is what she said. She said, "Only the Black woman can say when and where I enter, in the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood, without violence and without suing or special patronage. Then and there, the whole Black race enters with me." Wow. I got to tell you, it's an honor to be invited and welcomed into this community of the Ajax Anti-Black Racism Task Force, especially as a brown guy. To come alongside my Black brothers and sisters, my Black siblings in the human family. as well as my siblings in the human family who are racialized of other colors or marginalized of other colors, and also to come alongside any folks that might be here who are not racialized, but who want to make things better, like I want to make things better. But for one moment, to all of my Black brothers and sisters, to all of my Black and other racialized siblings in this human family, I just want you to look at yourself for a second and remind yourself that you have undisputed dignity. You are a person of infinite worth. And please, please, I ask you, don't confuse what I'm saying today with just talking nicely about yourself. I'm not just trying to say, speak lovely things about yourself. I'm not. Words matter, ideas matter, beliefs matter, truth and truths matter, because they all result in action and results. We as your community, we need you to believe this. We need you to see yourselves as worthy of succeeding. We need you to see yourselves as worthy of encouragement daily. We need you to see that you are worth giving tools for success, like the tools that Ms. Michelle Shaw is going to be giving you in a few minutes. We need you to see that you're worth giving those tools to, and that we as a community, we just need you to know and connect with and reconnect with day after day that you are a person of infinite worth and that you're a person of undisputed dignity. We need you to know that. When failure happens, when success happens, when lulls happen in your business or your ventures or education, we need you to reconnect with those truths again and again, and that you're worthy of success. And you're also worthy of taking a break when everybody and everything is demanding that you do more. Just take a break because you're worth taking the break. Please reconnect with yourselves. When I say, reconnect to that truth, I'm just telling you every day when you're walking through that door, walk through your door. Maybe it's multiple times a day in your mind. Reconnect with the truth that you're beautiful. Also connected to this idea of, reconnection into yourself is reconnecting to regulating yourself. Dr. Jody Carrington, she calls regulation. She goes, regulation just means not losing your blank mind. That's what regulation is. It's just not losing your blank mind. I'm not a breathing coach. I'm not a yoga instructor, but I did hear this health guy say this once. He said, if you want to start regulating yourself, you got to breathe properly. So I'm going to invite you all with me for about a 9-second breathing exercise. This is how he told me to breathe. And I try this sometimes if I've been sitting too long, sometimes if I'm anxious or if I'm losing focus. This is what he said to do. This is what I encourage you all to do. He said, when you're taking a breath, drop your shoulders, smell the roses, and blow out the candles. Now, you guys can't see that last picture, but the last picture is actually a GIF. It's an action picture. And if you were to see the actual GIF, when that woman blows out the candles, her dentures fall out. It's a hilarious little GIF. But the idea is that you're just blowing it out. And, so many of you in this community, you've not given yourself permission to just drop your shoulders and let it out. But you have infinite worth, like we said, and I'm asking you to reconnect to that reality. But I'm also encouraging you to reconnect to getting regulated again and again and again. And I know it's not easy. In fact, I want you to, if you don't mind, take a screenshot of this next slide. Just if you have a phone, take a screenshot of this next slide. Here are some practical things you can do that fit under this category of reconnecting to yourself. Reconnect to your breathing. Reconnect to exercise, reconnect to a talent or a hobby or a passion of yours that's been laying dormant. The truth is, some of you who are here tonight, you should be writing books and blogs and poetry and creating art, and we need you to, but we need you to reconnect to those things. Reconnect to nature, reconnect to your faith, reconnect to solitude if you need some time alone. Reconnect to art, reconnect to music, reconnect to literature. Reconnect to the things that bring you joy. Reconnect to the pros, man. Get some therapy if you need it. I do. Having anxiety or stress will not kill you. But I heard one psychologist say this: not talking about it might. It is said that there are 3 things that result in people being dysregulated. There are 3 things that result in people being dysregulated. The 3 things are uncertainty, fear, and no clear end in sight. Now, think about little kids, for example, at an elementary school, okay? Those kids are full of dysregulation. In fact, that same doctor, Jody Carrington, she says that Kids' jobs are to lose their minds. Their job is to be dysregulated, but we as the adults, our job is to model regulation to them. But why are kids so dysregulated all the time? It's because whatever's going on in their world has them feeling uncertain or fearful or feeling like there's no end in sight for a particular problem. When I used to work with folks who were incarcerated, there was a lot of dysregulated men. Why were they so dysregulated? So many of them. Because for so many of these men, in their worlds, there was a lot of uncertainty. Guilty or not guilty, awaiting trial or being sentenced. There was fear, especially because they didn't know it. Am I going to be facing a long sentence? Am I going to be found guilty? A couple of them even got life. And there was also no clear end in sight. So those two examples are just examples outside of a pandemic of how things can cause people to be dysregulated. Now, we talked about that, but now what do you think about the three components of COVID? The three components of a global pandemic are the exact same thing. Uncertainty, fear, no clear end in sight. When you think about that quote that I shared with you all at the beginning, that quote that said, when camping, you put up with the inconveniences because you know that you're eventually going to go home. As we said at the very beginning, we don't know when we're figuratively going home. Right now, this is the new normal. We've all been calling it. I call it the current normal. I don't think it's the forever normal, though. I'm hopeful. But those inconveniences that we put up at the beginning since March 2020, they're not little anymore. They're big. It's harder now. We're all still very uncertain. And we're still, many of us, fearful about what we're hearing and what we're seeing every day. There is still no clear end in sight. This brings me to the second thing that I want to encourage you all to reconnect with in this particular time of our lives. The second thing I want to encourage you to reconnect with is hope. To reconnect with hope. And let me clearly explain what hope is and what hope isn't. Leadership expert Tim Elmore, in his book, The Pandemic Population, he talks about this story about how an admiral in the army, he was a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War. And he talked about how the power of hope enabled him to endure the torture and the death that he was seeing all around him. He said, I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in my own life in the end. And I would turn this experience into the defining moment of my life, the defining event of my life. Now, let's be honest. Some folks, instead of swimming, they've been sinking during COVID. Some folks, instead of being creative, they've been crumbling. Many of us perhaps have been. But imagine what might be around the corner if we were to use this terribly difficult experience of a worldwide pandemic and turn it into the defining event in our lives. And I don't mean to sound insensitive or make it sound like it's really easy to do. It's not. But even though we've had a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of sadness and a lot of fear, what if we decided to not let this pandemic go to waste, if you will? What I mean is, if we have to go through this thing, let's get through it better. Let's get through it stronger. And let's get through it connected and reconnected to hope. Anyways, the interviewer asked this admiral who survived being in that prisoner of war situation. And he said to him, who are the people that you think were most likely not to survive that torture? And you know what he said? It actually surprised me. He said that the people that wouldn't get out of being prisoners of war were the optimists. He said, the optimists. Yes, they're the ones who said, we're going to be rescued by Christmas. But then Christmas would come and it would go. And then there would be another Christmas. And then they died of a broken heart. When you think about what hope is and what hope isn't, hope is not uninformed optimism. Hope is not, failing to, let me say it like this. Uninformed optimism is when we're failing to acknowledge the reality. Just like when the motivational speaker fails to read the room, an uninformed optimist won't confront those cold, hard, and ugly facts of a tough situation. My whole brand is called Hello Hope, and hope is spread throughout all of my talks. because I believe that when a person is introduced to hope, that hope can change the trajectory of a person's life. Like I said, I was almost killed by this drunk driver 3 months ago, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions of this terrible situation that happened to me. But I still have hope. I'm still breathing. I'm hopeful that I'll be stronger than ever and more successful. A lot of loss and a lot of sad things have been happening to so many of us in this community of ours. But I'm hopeful that eventually things will get better. And while we're waiting for things to get better, let's be better. Hope stays patient. It doesn't give a deadline for when things have to be done. It just stays hoping and holds on to hope when other folks lose hope. Some of you in this beloved community, you have some dreams, you got some ideas, you got some ventures, some projects, some goals that you can start. You can literally see it in your mind becoming a reality. I just want to encourage you, keep on connecting to that hope and do what you got to do until you get to where we need you to get. But every day does have its own drama. So the key will be for you to reconnect with that hope daily. When the markets are up, when places are hiring, and when the markets are down, and when places are not hiring, and when an oxtail dinner is $35 with extra gravy. I'm not going to call out any specific restaurants. Really quickly, I'll just share, reconnect with your why. Why did you start in the job that you're in? Why did you start the business or a venture that you started? Why are you studying whatever you're studying? Why are you saving whatever amount of money that you're saving? Why are you putting up with whatever you're putting up with? Why are you persevering through whatever you're persevering through? Again, I think it's easy to think about it once in a while, but I want to encourage you, don't think about it once in a while during a motivational moment. I want to inspire you to have 1,000,000 motivational moments by yourself, when no one else is in the room, when nobody else is in your shoes. You've probably heard it before, but reconnecting with your why day after day, that has the power of getting you to the point where success becomes reality. It's connected to hope. It will help you prevail. Before I share the last thing that I want to encourage you all to reconnect with, let me share with you an interesting comparison. In my talk in schools and for parents on battling loneliness and isolation, I often mention how when it comes to killer whales, orcas, there's some wild research that's been done by neuroscientists. They talk about how 99% of orcas that are in captivity, like in a concrete tank, like at Marineland or SeaWorld, they have this droopy fin. It's called a dorsal fin, and it's collapsed. And the reason for this collapsed dorsal fin is depression. 99% of orcas in captivity have it. Less than 1% of those orcas in the wild, in the sea, in the ocean have it. When these orcas are in captivity and they're limited to this concrete tank, they're separated from their orca friends, orca family members, orca brethren. Their social development, their connection to other orcas, that growth is impacted. They're not growing. Their stress levels soar. Their relationship skills go down. They get bored. They get crummy. They even lash out. Can any of you relate to this orca reality? If you have a droopy fin today, if you feel like your dorsal fin has been collapsed, I want you to know you're not alone. We have been alone, but we're alone together. We haven't been held captive in Marineland or SeaWorld, but many of us, we've only been allowed to be in our own worlds for the last 2 years. And with all these restrictions, we're still facing these difficult times. But with creativity and with safety, I want to encourage you all today, please be connected to each other. That's the last thing I wanted to share with you to be reconnected to. In their paper, Intersections of Justice in the Time of Coronavirus, Kara Page and Isha Pandit, they had to say this. They said, many of us are facing the realization that the myth of independence is really just that. We can't sustain ourselves, in our communities alone. We can't meet all of our needs alone. We can't stay safe alone. At this moment, a public health crisis is creating social, medical, and political trauma that is awakening many of us to the fact that our health, our safety, and our well-being are interconnected, whether we are in a global crisis or not. Reconnection means coming back. reconnection means coming back. And, we are like orcas, y'all. We need each other. We don't just need each other to promote our businesses or share things on social media. We need each other for our health, for our safety, and for our well-being. Let's encourage each other in this community with our ventures. Let's comment on each other's posts, but let's also remember little details about conversations so that whatever that thing was we were talking about, we can bring it back and make that person feel good so that we can create and foster supportive relationships. Let's be interconnected. In her book, The Village Effect, How Face-to-Face Contact Can Make Us Healthier and Happier, Susan Pinker says, social contact is like a vaccine. A little can go a long way when it comes to preventing pain and loss of opportunity while saving billions in health and social service costs. Like I said, reconnection. All that means is coming back to something, stepping into each other's world, reconnecting again and again and again. You guys have probably heard the stats of how many people are leaving their jobs. I'm not even talking about folks who are getting let go. That's one other difficulty. But how many people are leaving their jobs because they don't feel like they belong? Shutting businesses down because they simply can't go on. But we don't have to shut down support. We don't have to shut down hope, and we don't have to shut down each other. As a community, a task force, we are a force. We are a force if we stay reconnecting with each other. One person can't connect with everybody. We can't all physically have deep friendships and support with everybody. When you guys were in grade 7 and grade 6 and grade 5, at recess time, the whole school didn't play together. We all broke up into little squads, into little groups, and that's good. But day after day, within those little groups, let's keep on coming back to each other. Let's remind each other of our why. Let's remind each other of each other's why we stayed in this job, why we stayed in this study, whatever it is. If you're still here today, there's still hope to be had for the future. We need to be able to take off our armor. Within this community, there must be a place and space for us to take off our armor as we fight so many battles. And when I think about so many of our brothers and sisters, our siblings in this human family who have been racialized, you have been fighting so long in a world where systemic and institutional and structural and interpersonal and individual and even internal racism exists. You've been fighting for so long, but please reconnect with others who are in this battle with you. People whom you feel safe taking off your armor in front of so that people can help your wounds get healed. Little by little becomes a lot. Every day, let's figure out as a community, let's figure out how to reconnect with each other in little ways, in little groups, little teams. Nothing's wrong with having a clique, as long as you're willing to open it up sometimes. Let's figure out how to reconnect with one another in little ways, little acknowledgments, little celebrations, little wins, little emails, little text messages, little venting sessions, little compliments, little words of honor, little chats, little snacks, little coffees, little green teas, little shawarmas, little boneless chicken rotis at Drupati's, little surprises, little tears, little laughs. Reconnecting in the little things, little by little, becomes a lot. This contribution that I gave today was meant to set the stage for what Miss Michelle Shaw will be sharing in regards to the tools for success. As I pass the baton to her now to break that down for us, I'd like to share 2 quotes with you. And the first one, it's really connected to this idea of reconnection to ourselves, to hope, reconnection to our why, and reconnection to each other. And that quote is simply this. It's from Eric Mosley, the CEO from that organization, Work Human. He said, maybe at the end of your career, you may not be fixated on the things that you achieved as much as the friends that you met along the way. As a community, let's not see through one another, but let's see one another through to that success. At this point, I'm going to hand the baton over to Miss Michelle Shaw, and she's going to break it down for us to get even more practical. Thank you so much, y'all, and stay in touch.
Thank you, Aubrey. That was fantastic. And welcome. I I'm so excited to be back here, Ajax. Last year, I had the privilege of coming on with Robert Small to kick off this series for anti-Black racism and the anti-Black racism task force here in the town of Ajax. And it was a privilege because what we talked about when we started then was what it meant to have excellence, what it meant to have Black excellence, and what it meant to have excellence in our communities. And as Aubrey has talked about, we are looking at this theme of reconnection. And one thing that I want to continue on from Aubrey's conversation is one idea is for us to reconnect then to meaningful goal setting. And I'll tell you why meaningful goal setting may be something you want to engage with. The research suggests that when we are goal-oriented, it improves our ability to regulate our behavior, our ability to regulate our emotions. It improves our mental health, which is a challenge for many of us right now. It improves our ability to learn. It improves career, business outcomes, and it certainly improves the quality of our relationships. And so, as Aubrey talked about, reconnecting. Sometimes I want to just ask us to come back to center. We are beginning at the end because when we started off the Task Force series, we could have started with goal setting. Instead, we're ending in with it because the timing is so ideal at this time of the year. It's all that we're talking about right now. What are your goals? Did you set goals? What are the goals? What are the goals? And I want to take a look at what we mean when we talk about goals and goal setting. And in particular, meaningful goal setting that produces the outcomes and the results that we desire. So one thing for sure is that goal setting reduces some of the things that Aubrey touched on. He touched on uncertainty, fear, and no end in sight. Clear goals help us to reduce uncertainty, to reduce fear, and certainly to reduce the feeling that there is no end in sight. So goal setting is going to be critical to us. So let us then go back and look at what Aubrey talked about in terms of reconnecting, and we're going to reconnect to goals. Michelangelo said, the problem that we face as human beings is never that we set goals that are too high for us to reach, but that we set them too low and we succeed. And when we come and think about Black community, racialized communities, and other communities who suffer, we know that we have many reasons that we may not even be thinking about why we set goals that are too low for us. And so today I want to talk a little bit about where we're going. And I want you to work with me as I talk with you about 7 lucky tips that I'm going to give you in 2022 to make your goal setting more meaningful and impactful for you. Number 1, I'm going to talk to you about the blur in which we set goals. Like, we've just come out of Christmas and the happy holidays, all of the other religious holidays that happen in Christmas, and some holidays are just beginning in the new year. But we've come out of a very hectic holiday, the end of a very hectic year. We're doing all of this work, and at the same time, we're planning the new year. We're starting up work, school. We had a lockdown. There's so much going on. And how can we, in the midst of all of that blur, really pause to set meaningful goals? So the first tip is you can't set goals in a blur. You've got to create time and space to set goals. That's going to be very important. And because when we're talking about goals, we're talking about what your future should look like. What should your future look like? And how do you figure it out when the world is spinning around and the children are in the background, school isn't gone back, you have these goals to set, the team to get set up, lesson planning to do. There's so much going on. We can't set meaningful goals that define our future in that context. And so what we need to talk about is excellence as knowing your goals. And knowing your goals really means you're going to take a look at reflecting on your past. That's number 2. Assessing yourself. That's number 3. Deciding on your goals. That's number 4. Designing a pathway, a process to achieve those goals. That's number 5. And then choosing the people you want to help you achieve your goals is going to be another of those. But before we get to those 5, here's what we're going to look at. What do we mean when we talk about a goal? What do we mean? What are goals? So it's a future result that we desire. There are many different ways that we can define it. In Aubrey's conversation, he talked about a direction, and I wanted you to know, he talked about that MapQuest set of directions. That's what the goal helps you. That's the direction. Where he's going with his wife, that's the goal. And this is what we're talking about today. Tony Robbins has a really good definition of goals that I like and want to share with you. It's you create your future in advance. That's what a goal is. And you know how to do this. You've planned a wedding. You've planned some event. You've planned for your child's birthday party. You've planned for your mother's surprise party. You've planned all of these events. And when you're planning these events, you have everything mapped out to the T. You have go and taste the food even to make sure it's going to taste exactly how you want it. We know how to create the future in advance. But we create the future in advance for a vacation. We research, we make sure there's horseback riding. We make sure that this is close by and there's a beach and there's a golf course. We know how to create the future in advance. But sometimes we do not so intentionally, not so deliberately create our own future. In fact, the most important future that we have to create is usually not given that much attention. And so I want to encourage you that when we don't do that, we find ourselves going around all these different pathways and can't figure out why we aren't getting to it. And that's what brings up that uncertainty, that fear, and that sense that there is no clear end in sight because we have not done the work to create the future that we desire. And so what I want to talk a little bit about is, let's assume that we are at the point B where we want to set goals. Let's assume we're looking at 3 points, A, B, and C. And B is the point at which we are standing right now when we want to set goals. Let us first go back and take a look at how we got from point A to B. So take a look at where you were January last year. And let's spend some time taking a look at how we got from A to B before we worry about the C that we want to go to. This is the step that we don't usually pay attention to. When we're at B, it's important for us to look at A. And the process of looking at A, looking backwards, is called reflection, self-reflection. And it is really deliberately making space for thinking. Deliberately clearing space for thinking. And what should we be thinking about? Well, we want to think about our own thinking. That's first. How are we thinking in flawed ways? We need to think about our own thinking, think about our attitudes, think about our thinking. I like to stay there because that's part of why we set goals that are not stretch goals. The goals that Michelangelo talks about, that they're not big enough for us. Think about our thinking. What are we thinking? What of our thoughts gets in the way of us setting the goals that we desire and deserve? Where does the imposter syndrome come in and think, that's a little bit too much for me? I'm Jamaican, and there is a saying in Jamaica, don't hang your basket where you can't catch it. And that's what they say when they think your goals are too ambitious. That's the thinking we want to look back on. What are the things we're thinking that are impacting our goal setting processes? Because if we don't correct the thinking, we'll never go forward and set the goals that we need to set. All right, so we want to be evaluating our thinking. We want to look at our attitudes. We want to look at our behaviors, of course. When we set goals last year, what goals did we set? Frankly, some people didn't set any at all. Why didn't you set them? And if you did set goals, what kinds of goals did you set? And what did you do about the goals? What did you achieve? And how do you feel about what you've done over the last year? For some people, it was a great year. For some people, I didn't set any goals. I have nothing to measure against. But it's important for us to be thinking about all of these processes, we need to be thinking also about what are the aspirations that we have. What were we hoping for last year? Did we write it down? Did we go after it? Did we take any steps to go there? Or did we dismiss it because our thinking is flawed and we are thinking in ways that preclude us from effective goal setting? And if you go back to what Aubrey talked about earlier, it's really what he's saying at the core. It's knowing that you're worthy, that you're worth it, that you are worth and deserve and can go after any single goal that you set for yourself is a very important part of what you need to pause to think about before we move forward in setting goals. So that's a really important one. In reflection, really, you're holding up a mirror to yourself. You're holding up a mirror and you're taking a look at yourself and what you've done over the last year, and you're being honest with yourself. And certainly you're not the only mirror. You look at yourself, but the people around you, they have mirrors that they're holding up to you too, and they see you more clearly sometimes than you see yourself. They see what's in your blind spot. So get feedback from people around you to see how they thought you behaved. Did you get up and chase your goals? Did you make excuses? Those are some of the things we have to think about. And then once you do that reflection, that honest reflection, and that honest reflection asks you to peel back, to dig deep, to discover, to uncover, to go inside, to see the worthiness that sits inside of you, and to figure out what plan, what goal do you need to set to cultivate it, to make it reality. That's really part of what reflection is about. To go and see what things you've been doing that you need to keep doing that are working really well. What things you're doing that need to be changed, modified in some way, and what things you just have to stop right away. Reflection is essential to meaningful goal setting, because if we don't stop and reflect, then we get locked into a pattern and we unconsciously move forward doing the same old things and expecting different results. And then we wonder 10 years later, we're back in the same position and looking over going, I don't understand, I work so hard, but I'm still here. There's a smart way to work. And that's what we're talking about with meaningful goal setting. Once you've done the reflection, so let's follow the 7 steps that we're doing. 1, you're going to create time and space for this activity. Not 1 minute, not 1 day, but half an hour, let's say, before bed, early in the morning before the house wakes up, but not 1/2 an hour. Because if you're going on vacation or if you're planning a wedding, you'll spend a little bit more time than half an hour. Book time once a week, once a day. You decide, depending on the kind of goal, to really be thinking about and acting upon your goals. So because goal setting is so important, I make sure that there is time in every single day for me to reflect on my goals and how I'm performing and how I'm thinking about them and how I'm sabotaging my own self from the goals that I deserve. And when you do that, you come closer to where you need to be to achieve meaningful goals. Once you reflect on the goals, then now you have the honest truth in front of you. You've held up the mirror to yourself. It's time to do your self-assessment. Look at your strengths, look at your weaknesses. Areas for development is the way I prefer to refer to them. Look at the opportunities that are out there that you could leverage based on your strengths, based on anything that you've done in the past, anything that you are able to do now. Look at what you can leverage, and also think about threats that could impact your opportunity to go after your goals. When you are doing this analysis, the SWOT analysis is the acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When you're doing this, and I know you may do this at work, but not do it on yourself. I'm encouraging you to do it on yourself. You incorporated. You, the most important person in your life. You, the person who deserves and has a right to go after what you desire and deserve, and more of it. Swatch yourself and see what you've got. Understand what this is. This is to set the starting point. This is point A. Where am I starting from in 2022? This is a good point because you're going to be measuring your progress from this point. So this is an important step to take. And I'm going just a quick high-level overview for you tonight, because each of these 7 elements is a full topic for further discussion. And this is what I've been covering and will be covering over the next 7 weeks on Upskill Talks, my podcast. So you can follow along that for additional information on this goal setting information. But just as a high level, after you've cleared time to do this important work, start with reflection. Look back, especially at your thinking, and make sure that you're thinking in ways that are consistent with the goals that you want for yourself. And then assess yourself, measure where you're at right now. Once you've done that, your next step, and I know Aubrey touched on your why, the sense of purpose. This is the most important step that is missed when we're doing goal setting. I will be honest with you, many years ago, I don't think I knew what the word purpose was. I'd not met this word. I didn't understand what it was. It sounded like something that businesses should do. I shouldn't really engage with it myself. And what that did, it made me accept opportunities that were really good, lucrative opportunities, but they weren't taking me where I needed to go. And this is why you need to be clear on your sense of purpose. When you do that self-assessment, know what your values are, know why you are here, know what you're getting up every morning for. When you live and work and learn and play and serve with a sense of purpose, you don't need carrots to do your work. Your motivation comes from inside, and you get up on a tough day through the pandemic, through mental health challenges, through family challenges, through lockdown. You get up every day and you chase your dreams because you are committed and you're serving your sense of purpose. And your sense of purpose is something bigger than yourself. It adds meaning, and you have an impact that you want to make, and it makes you feel good, and it's really meaningful. My purpose is to upskill youth and adults, and I want to upskill them to be better self-leaders. And every day I get up, all of the tasks that I choose are based on that. And if some opportunity comes my way and it doesn't fit in that bucket, it's not for me, no matter what it looks like. Everything that I do needs to fit in that bucket, and it helps to define how I do my work. And I want to encourage you to take some time to go through and figure out what your purpose is, because then once you know that, then we're good for the next step. Then you can find your own way. Because what happens a lot, we grow up in environments where our parents tell us, you're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be this. You can't be an artist. You can't be a hairdresser. You can't be this. You need to be an accountant. There are predefined roles, whether society tells us or so on. I was a nurse. You need to be a nurse. Your cousin is a nurse. Your sister is a nurse. And we follow other people's way. And then we wonder why it's so difficult to get up every day and do it. We feel like we're fighting ourselves. We're not in flow. It's hard to do because it's not you. But if you define your own way, if you find your own way, then it's going to be easy because you can decide your own goals based on who you say you are, what your purpose is. Now, the reason why we do goal setting is the acknowledgement that there's so many things that we could do and we would like to do, but we don't have enough time on this planet to do all of them. So we pick the ones that best fit the purpose that we serve, and we give it everything that we have. And we try to make an impact and gain some meaning and value for the limited time that we have. So that's why we cannot, and we have to decide on goals. We can't get up this year. If you start writing down your goals and you have a full page of them, okay, pick out the top 3 and scrap the rest and let those stay for next year. We can't get everything done. We have limited time, limited resources, limited energy. And so we have to limit our goals to fit within that. So once you have decided on your goals, so you're creating space, you're reflecting, you're doing the assessment, you've come up with you know what your strengths and so on are, and you've decided on your purpose. Then you need to decide on your goals. And now we're going to design a way forward. And I like to use the example of a builder that sets a goal to build a house. And you know, when the builder sets a goal to build a house, his next step is not to start building. He's not going to start building right away. He's not going to start buying materials and dropping it on the property to start building. He's not going to start hiring trades right away. He's going to hire people. He's going to draw a plan. He's going to talk to trades. He's going to draw things. They have business information modeling now. They can see this thing in 3D. They do the work to make it real on paper, to create the future on paper, to see what mistakes he's making, to do all the modifications, to do the rework on paper where it's more cost effective. He maps it out completely. And that's the best practice that we have to do. When we set our goals, don't get up and start running it down right away. Stop. Create a process. Write down all of the action steps. You need an action plan. You design your way to the goal. That's what Aubrey talked about. They're going to Buffalo. You go to MapQuest and print off the step-by-step directions to get you there. That's what that is. You need that process. Otherwise, he could leave and, end up in Windsor and find out he's going the wrong way. He could do anything and drive around. Perhaps he'll eventually get there 20 years later. That's what happens to a lot of us, and we lose valuable time. If you want to achieve your goals in a cost-effective, efficient, and meaningful way, clear path, take time to design the process. So here's what we've just said. Your goals will help you if you've defined them, you've decided on them, and you've designed the way for them. Then you are the best person to deliver on them. When they're decided by someone else, designed by someone else, and handed over for you to deliver, it's the hardest thing to do. So I want you to take a good look at that. We're accountable for our goals. So the last step in the process is to pick your people. You hear it said, pick your tribe, pick your peeps, know your people, know your circle, know the human resources that you need to get the job done, your team, your network. Aubrey talked about it. We can't do this alone. When we opened up the series last year, we talked about the importance of community because we can't do it alone. And we're back here again talking about it. In order for us to achieve our goals this year or any day or any night, we need to empower each other to achieve it. We need community. We need each other. You've got to know your circle. You've got to know your people. And when I say know your people, I don't mean know the people that are around you. I know the people who you need to be around you in order to achieve your goals. Because sometimes the people around us are the exact people that we will never achieve our goals with. And that is why you reflect to think, who am I listening to? Who is around me that's helping me? Who is around me wasting my time, calling me and talking for 2 hours, social media chats, wasting my time, not talking anything productive, not taking me where I need to go? Who needs to be out of my circle for this particular goal that I'm about to set for myself, for this future that I'm going to design for myself, for this future that I am creating for myself? Who do I need to support me? Perhaps it's someone that's not in your circle today. Perhaps who do I not need in this circle? Sometimes we need to add and sometimes we need to minus. But you will only know that based on your own reflections. And so what I want to encourage you to do, Ajax, because we've talked about this over and over, is one, this year, I know some people don't believe in goal setting, and you won't believe in it if it's not working for you. You won't believe in it if you're not doing it the way that we need to do it for it to be impactful. You won't believe in it if you're doing it the same way and getting the same results. But I want you to believe in it and believe that there's a way that you can do it and to have great results. And that means you will start off by clearing time every single day to reflect on your goals. And Aubrey's speech had a real piece that I think you want to pull out of this. He talked about reconnecting to things. Keep reconnecting to something. You know what I think we can reconnect to every day? we can keep reconnecting to our goals. That will keep us focused and keep us moving forward. So 1, create time to reconnect to your goals. 2, you said it, reflect. 3, assess. 4, purpose. Design your purpose. 5, decide on your goals. 6, design your process. And 7, pick your people, pick your tribe. And that is what we're going to have to do, Ajax, if we are to empower each other to achieve excellence within the Black community, within racialized communities, within religious communities, and within all of our communities. All of us together, we're going to have to do that, because when it comes to goal setting, I'm going to repeat what Michelangelo says. The problem that we face is not that we aim too high and fail. That wouldn't be too bad of a problem. It's that we set our aim too low and succeed, and we become complacent and contented and comfortable and locked into a way of thinking that we are achievers, yet we are not near where we could be or should be, desire to be, or deserve to be. And so I want to encourage you to embrace meaningful goal setting following the 7 steps, and continue to listen to more of what we're talking about with goal setting on Upskill Talks throughout the year, because goal setting is not something you do January and write it down and go away. Goal setting is what the literature calls a meta skill. It's a skill that's essential, so essential that once you learn the skill, it helps you to learn other skills better. It helps you to succeed with all other skills. And so goal setting is a critical skill that we need to develop. And because we're about excellence, it takes goals, one goal at a time, to stack up to excellence. And Town of Ajax, I know you're about excellence and empowering each other to excellence. Let's empower each other to keep reconnecting to our goals, reconnecting to each other, reconnecting to our values, so that we can achieve that excellence within the community and be able to impact broader communities here in Durham and across the world. Thank you.
Tonight's incredible speakers tonight, Aubrey and Michelle did an incredible job in setting off the year with reconnecting to hope and goal setting. I thought it was really impactful the way that you both of your messages really came together. So thank you so much for doing such a great job tonight. We will now begin the Q&A portion of the program by taking a few questions that have been submitted by our audience. Okay. Okay. Devin, do we have any questions tonight? Okay.
I see a question. I could read it out if that's helpful.
That'd be great. Thank you.
There's one question that says from Kaylee, Aubrey, you touched upon systemic issues and how it has affected us as a nation. What can I do as a youth teacher to help empower the next generation with hope? What a great question. I don't know what you look like, Kaylee, but whether you are Black or brown or Asian or Indigenous, it's all good, because I think the answer is very much the same, especially within this context. I think that when it comes to youth teachers empowering next generation the next generation with hope, it's okay to acknowledge, especially within this context, I think it's okay to acknowledge that harm has been done to racialized groups. I think it's also important that we acknowledge that barriers have existed and that barriers do exist, but also to remind youth that hope isn't just uninformed optimism, as I said before, and remind them that sometimes hope is enough. When things are difficult, hope is enough to get us to where we need to go. And modeling that hope, I think, in front of kids is going to be huge. Modeling that confidence that we have in them as the next generation. I call it modeling confidence in their competence, especially as young Black students or other racialized students. I think we just got to model that hope in front of them, just like regulating. Like I was saying, the best way to regulate your kids is just to model it. It can't be taught. It has to be modeled. I also think that amplifying Black voices, amplifying racialized voices, um, needs to happen more and more to help empower that next generation with hope. Sometimes we talk about Black folks and other racialized groups like they're the voiceless people. We need to be a voice for the voiceless. I don't think that's true. As somebody who's not typically racialized myself, I don't think I need to be a voice for the voiceless. I think I need to be quiet sometimes and let them speak. And I think we need to also follow the lead of Black voices and other racialized voices. Follow Black scholars and Black teachers and racialized scholars, other racialized scholars, leaders, educators, theorists, etc. Follow their lead and share those resources with those kids, and just really modeling it. Hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you, Aubrey. Melissa J asks, when creating goals, what are some ways that I can help myself be accountable throughout the year when my work-life balance has me a little more distracted and overwhelmed? That'll go to Michelle.
All right, thank you. Nelissa, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. That allows me to dive a little bit deeper. As I mentioned, this was a quick overview, so I didn't have a chance to dive a little bit deeper. So when you're setting your big goals, then you need to take your goals and think about how to break them down into bite-sized pieces, the doable pieces that fit into daily activities. And once you've done that, you take a big goal. Let's say if you make a goal of doing something by the end of the year, think about what you can do in 1 quarter and then break that down. And then think about what you can do in 1 month and then break that down to what you can do in 1 week and then break it down to what you can do in 1 day. And then look at your schedule in a day and dedicate a half an hour or so to making sure that that activity is happening. If it's not in your schedule, if you're not booking time for it, it probably won't happen. So that's going to be really important. So that's one. The next key, and this key is provided by the American Society of Training and Development. And it's research that suggests that the number one way to achieve your goals is to have an accountability partner. And so this is again back to what we talked about with empowering each other. So having a mutual accountability partner, someone that you talk to about your goals and someone that can talk to you about their goals. And it doesn't have to be mutual. If there's someone who's willing to talk to you about your goals but doesn't want to talk about theirs, as long as you're having that check-in. What the research suggests is that just writing down your goals and sharing it with that person, letting them know what it is, that alone increases your chances of achieving your goal by 65%. If you go further and schedule a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting based on the type of goal, whatever that timeline is, to meet and talk about your goals, get feedback, share strategies, share challenges. If you do that on a regular schedule, you are 95% likely to achieve your goal. And so particularly in a time when we're so stressed out and overwhelmed, we need accountability partners. We need to dive into, and this is what I talked about, find your people. And if the person is not already in your circle, reach out and find someone else. There are a lot of resources out there. This person could be a coach, could be a counselor, could be a faculty member, it could be your neighbor, it could be somebody at the community center, somebody at the religious institution, it could be someone anywhere. If you don't have that person already, there are many people who would be happy to meet with you for 15 minutes, per week or bi-weekly or monthly to discuss your goal progress. That alone increases your chances of succeeding by 95%. So strongly encourage you to engage with those two strategies to move you forward throughout the year. And again, follow me on Upskill Talks, the podcast, as I talk about these strategies throughout the year. That way I can continue to give you tips and insights to support the development of your goal setting strategies.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Our final question is going to come from Elijah S. Thank you to both speakers for your message this evening. What can I do to feel more confident, self-assured, and happier as 2020 has begun and we're still navigating uncertainty during this pandemic? Now, both of you speakers can jump into that one.
Michelle, how about you go ahead and start?
Okay, no problem. So, Elijah, I want to talk about confidence. Okay, and I'm going to encourage you to listen to episode 5 of my podcast because I'm talking about confidence. And when you say here, what can I do to feel more confident, self-assured, and so on, Elijah, I want you to know that there are no off-the-shelf solutions for this, because what it will take to make you feel confident will be different than what it will take to make Aubrey feel confident, or what it will take for me to feel confident. So it's really about doing that reflection, Elijah, and realizing what is the particular reason that is getting in the way of that feeling of self-assurance, that feeling of happiness, the lack of confidence, the insecurity, the imposter. Where is that coming from? Because then you can address the root cause rather than paste a band-aid over it. So what I'm afraid of is the solutions to confidence that say things like, do a proper posture and smile and hold your back and dress nicely. Because you can dress nicely, smile and hold your back and still feel like an imposter showing up everywhere, not feel self-assured. And so particularly for communities that have historically had barriers faced, it is very hard to build your confidence, and the regular off-the-shelf solutions may not work for you. And so link up with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to provide you some additional strategies and so on. We run a confidence challenge every year in the summer, so you can look out for that at Upskill Community. And that's what we take 2 full weeks to look at the particular challenges that we are having with our confidence that off-the-shelf solutions may not fit. But developing your skills, improving your knowledge, and building meaningful relationships that challenge you are ways that you can build yourself. Positive relationships with people who know who you are, who see you and call out the good in you. Building up your skills like communication, skills like goal setting, skills like organization skills, those skills will help you to feel better. And learning and diving deeper into whatever you do for work and making sure that you're very competent and you're constantly building your capacity. Those are things that will help you as well.
The only other thing I would add to that, other thing I would add to that, because that's fantastic, is have an outward-looking life. I think having an outward-looking life is one of the secrets that I've found. It's like a secret satisfaction you have. If Michelle talked about the confidence and the self-assurance. If I was to focus on that happiness part of your question, Elijah, it would be to do that. I found this quote as Michelle was speaking. It's from Riaz Megji in his book, Every Conversation Counts. And what he says is, we're driven to connect. Our brains are literally designed to do this. And ultimately, that desire for connection is as altruistic as it is selfish. What we really want is not just to be cared for, but to care for others. Maybe that's why volunteering is so good for both physical and mental health, because it makes us feel connected to a community and puts us back inside that literally life-sustaining network of mutual care. So when you're looking outwards, it's hard to see the drama that's going in. I'm not saying don't take time for introspection, do it. But I think part of that happiness comes from, being a blessing to somebody else. There's that saying that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. I think it's true. So I think that could be part of your concoction that you're putting together to be a happier, more confident, and more self-assured person. So thanks, Elijah.
Awesome. That is awesome. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions tonight. And thank you to the wonderful speakers, your great inspiration, and your great steps to success. I do hope that those who watch tonight and those who are going to watch after would take time to watch this again and grab hold of the very practical and meaningful steps as provided by these speakers. For more information on our task force, just follow the Facebook fan page to help elevate hope and goal setting, as well as the other themes we have covered throughout the speaker series, installments within our community, through our programming and other opportunities. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Brenton, for being our wonderful facilitator for the evening. And thank you to our speakers for your time and dedication in contributing to the conversation on hope and goal setting for personal success and sharing your presentation with us tonight. To continue the conversation, please visit us at ajax.ca/taskforce or facebook.com/AABRTF. And as usual, you can always connect with us on our Town of Ajax social media platforms. Thank you, Ajax.